don't decide anything by themselves. This is totally clear. Even this problem now with accreditation. You think that whatever they call themselves, press office or Minister of Information of Donetsk decide suddenly that they don't let in journalists. There was two issues this autumn, one with a report from Frontal 21, the other one from your colleagues, that showed this lady who did a beautiful movie showing when they say, put on some Ukrainian costumes and shoot a little bit back on us. So after this, I think that there was a clear instruction from Moscow saying, guys, if you cannot handle press, then for the moment, that's it. No one comes in and out, and now they will for sure send someone from our big brother who will put order in this and put system in this, and then you will see that accreditation will be reopened because there are still foreign journalists working in Russia. So they once again found a place where the local management was absolutely not able to handle the situation, so they stopped, and they will arrange it with help of some professionals.
Oh, yeah.
So without Russia, we can speak what we want about Minsk 1, 2, 3, 4. First of all, for me, Minsk is just a way of stopping massive killing. Minsk allowed to stop the completely active phase. Although the Balts will fall after Minsk too, because Uncle Vladimir Vladimirovich decided to quickly, это еще надо. So this we still need to finish. So Minsk has for the moment the only purpose to stop this massive killing and the active fight. But even point one, ceasefire, there is no ceasefire.
There is no ceasefire, that's true.
So I totally agree with you, but I don't have any clue how this can be achieved.
There's no ceasefire, and also clearly the Ukrainian forces think that they cannot unilaterally withdraw all of the heavy artillery that there is, because there's a fear that, I guess it must be because they have a fear that the Russian-backed forces would try to take more territory, and so you can't, I'm not sure how much sense it makes to talk about doing things which are obviously impossible, like demilitarizing and getting, because you're talking about getting the other side to withdraw, and they haven't got an incentive to do so. The Russians aren't telling them to do so. The one thing that maybe Ukraine can influence is trying to influence the opinion of people in the territories that are not under Ukrainian control and in the areas that are, and the people who go back and forth. And at the moment, Ukraine's policies are having a negative impact on those people. They have a huge hassle to get across the border. People can't get their pension payments. They're refused peresilencia. Eternally displaced people can't get their pensions payments. I think that there are a lot of things that Ukraine could possibly do to try and improve Ukraine's image among the people of the Donbass, and I don't see Ukraine doing very much.
If I may, that is why we need international support, an international coalition to influence Russia, to influence President of Russia, Putin, to actually order his forces, his FSB, his GRU and other stuff, stop killing and start really, let's say, demilitarization. That's just small.
But what can you do without international support?
You
have to look at what you can also do without international support, and what you can do without international support is try to do things that will make people in the Donbass feel more warmly towards Ukraine.
Agree.
Better communication as well with the information war, where they are being dispossessed. They've lost the field essentially in the Donbass region. But on the diplomatic front, I think the ruling from the Hague, the International Criminal Court report, is a very interesting opportunity for Ukraine. Just yesterday, obviously, Russia will disregard it, has disregarded it, and said that we don't recognise the implications of this, but it does give added credibility to the added weight to the argument. Again, this is Russian aggression, and that needs to be very much a key message for Ukrainian diplomacy going forward for months. It's not just we don't say this, NATO doesn't say this, the International Criminal Court says it's The Hague, which is, however flawed or weak an organisation it may be, it's the premier voice for international law in this area.
Why hasn't Ukraine ratified the Rome Statute of the
It's a good question.
It's another good question, but they have recognised its jurisdiction in Ukraine.
I voted for when I was. I used to be the member of the parliament. I voted for to recognize.
Do you know why it was not adopted?
Last question to the presidential faction in the parliament and Mr. Yatsenyuk faction in the parliament. Why still we had to have this double game?
What were the
my
arguments that were
opinion
made
is
at
to
the time?
ratify and go immediately with those proofs, evidences of Russian aggression and human losses and economic and social losses.
I think it's a very good question. Why? Because I think it's something consciously done. It's not just, you forgot, the usual bureaucracy that forgets things.
Oh, well, it can
No,
be
I don't think so.
It can be assumed that they fear that they would also be brought to trial and they would have to face charges or certainly face awkward questions. That's as may be, but I think that fundamentally what this report does is again just add more weight to the position. It makes the Russian denials look more ridiculous and alienates them more. And if we're talking about the American situation, for example, with the new Trump administration now, no doubt looking at these issues with a fairly fresh glance, it makes it all that more difficult to talk about some sort of a reload or a resetting of relations with Russia, because this is the International Criminal Court.
I think this really does contribute. I think Trump will probably be good for Ukraine on this specific issue, given the fact that the international community has been very clear that this is Russian aggression. And as time passes, the more that Ukraine makes public the evidence they have, and the more that they get support. And I think I would hope that the new Trump administration would support doing investigations and further providing evidence and intelligence to the international community, further confirming that it is Russia attacking Ukraine.
It was just one point about the report that came out of the Hague. When they were talking about, they were quite explicit about Crimea and a lot less so about Donetsk, but they did still say the signs are all there. And they specifically said from at least the 17th of July 2014, which, as we all know, was the date of MH17 and the disaster there. So basically, they're basing that, I would assume, I think it's a fair assumption, they're basing that finding, that conclusion, on the joint investigation team report, which the Dutch led. So in other words, but the point is, the evidence didn't come from Ukraine, it came from Holland. So Ukraine needs to be leading this debate rather than letting other international bodies come forward and do it. They need to be saying this.
We are now here talking to SHUSTER. He was the first and the only one who broadcasted the truth next day after this terroristic act. I mean, this MH17 downing. 18th of July 2014.
Oh.
What did the other Ukrainian TV channels say?
Let me not.
No, but look, it was, well, forget about it. It's not really an issue. I don't remember what they said, but no one was investigating really immediately. Everybody was shocked. No one knew what to say. Everybody has his own owner, and you don't know what the owner thinks. And then you get oligarch 1, oligarch 2, oligarch 3. Somebody in July is on vacation. You can't reach him, and you don't have a position. Yeah, it's kind of simple. But what I'm saying is that the criminal court, basically, based on Crimea, they're saying it's a Russian aggression. Yes. Yeah? The tragedy of a Malaysian airplane, well, I mean, it's just part of that aggression.
Yes.
But this was the specific date. You know, the date is I mean, you don't have Russian anti-aircraft technologies appearing in isolation.
No, absolutely.
If that's
absolutely.
there, that's the Russian army is there.
I also think it's very important.
It's a dinosaur bone.
The date is very important.
The whole structure from that, and this is one of the keys to that. That's why that is such an important issue, not only for the tragedy of the loss of life in itself, but because of what it says about the bigger conflict. That if that was there at that time, then clearly that's a smoking gun.
But you see, but all the reports that come in the Western press, American and European, yes, Russia has not ratified. It's withdrawing its signature, but Ukraine hasn't ratified as well. And no one understands why.
It's unfortunate in that sense, and it limits the impact in that. But in terms of the court of public opinion, you know, the reports about Ukraine have often been sort of couched in a he said, she said way. Well, they say that it's Russia. Russia says it's not. Now they can say, well, it's he said, she said. They said. You know, the international court has spoken now. That's the biggest authority yet to make this. And we've also had the UN vote, which was also non-binding, but also recognising the occupation of Crimea. definitely issue to Donbass, admittedly.
Saying that
But
Russia is aggressor.
yeah, but again, these things are influential in the international opinion because they are not associated with, if NATO says okay, but people will be inclined to say, well, of course they would say that because they have their own position vis-a-vis Russia, whereas the International Criminal Court in The Hague is recognized internationally as an authoritative voice.
Yes, I understand Russia's position, in a sense, Putin's position, that they're handling 10 cases now, out of which only one is European, and that's Abkhazia. It's 2008. And obviously, Putin is risking there a lot.
Yes.
Yeah, no, Ukraine is not on the issue yet. It's not yet a legal issue.
But it'll be going down the road for a lot in terms of legal consequences, in terms of them actually reaching some sort of verdict. I mean, it could be in 10, 15 years' time. Who knows, if ever. My point would be that it's something that Ukrainian diplomacy can use today. You don't have to wait for a verdict. This report in itself is already enough to become a centerpiece for Ukraine's diplomacy in interaction with Trump, all the European partners, with the international community in general, to say, guys, here it is. There's no ambiguity here. It's not just our evidence, but then bolstering it, getting the case together, getting international lawyers together to put the case as solidly as possible, and saying, this is the key. In my opinion, the Russian role is the key to the whole riddle, the whole puzzle. We're talking about, how can we get the people of Donbass? How can we, win hearts and minds in the Donbass, or how can we influence people there, or interacting with whoever, Zakharchenko or whoever they have there at any given time. The Russian thing is the key. Until we address that, nothing's going to be resolved. And this is a way of doing that. This is a way of applying pressure.
It shows again the terrible job of Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine and of Minister of Information of Ukraine, because they don't manage to pass this message to the international community. Because again, I don't think that Ukraine alone can force Russia to stop this whole
Absolutely
thing.
not. Yeah.
So internationally, when you go to Europe and you speak with people, in their mind there's ceasefire, everything is calm, etc. And I think again it's a mistake of the Minister of Foreign Affairs and their team and the Minister of Information not to pass this message that the day before yesterday there was again shelling in Marinka. At the very beginning, Mr. President was walking around in all major events, like in Munich, with pictures and everything. It's beautiful, but we don't have this anymore. So the interest of international media for Ukraine and most of international politics for Ukraine is very low, positive speaking. So make it not low and show the evidence. If you take small sample of Marinka 2 days ago, when you see a school with a hole like this in the wall, any idiot understands that this was not done with a water pistol, but heavy artillery. You saw in any international news anywhere any picture of this? No, it's barely mentioned here, because in any case it's happening each day.
But do you think that pressure of public opinion would change something? Because we're not pretending that that Angela Merkel or François Hollande or even Viktor Orban don't know that it's Russia that's behind this. Of course they know, of course they're convinced, but they don't know what to do about it, or they think they can get away with not doing something about it. I don't know what is the answer, but I'm inclined to think that they really just don't know what they can do.
Again, maybe on MH17, for Ukraine, the best and the most important message in high time to have prosecution, to set up trial here in Ukraine on those responsible for this terrorist act. Ukraine, and now there is no political will or any other reason, but why not to organize and to have this trial and to actually at least name those whom we could say that you are responsible for the organization, you stood behind this Russian Book M1 and all other, let's say, equipment brought to our territory to commit this crime, international crime. That's the best message we can and should actually send to the international community.
MH17 certainly shocked the world.
Yes.
But another event shocked the world, that Crimea was given away without one bullet fired.
The world understands that.
That's another issue.
You think so?
The world understands that the Ukrainian armed forces were in no position to defend Crimea militarily at that time, I think.
Yes, and what is true that on 20th of February, Savik, we were here at the Maidans of Revolution of Dignity. 20th of February, Mr. Putin ordered to his troops, and look, 24,000 Russian soldiers appeared one day and night at the streets of